Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to Arpedio's LinkedIn Live. Here, as you know, we talk about the account based sales revolution. And today it is actually my 15th LinkedIn Live that I'm hosting for Arpedio. And I think we have today one of the best topics. I'm very excited about today's session. We'll talk about how to master the art of building top performing commercial teams. And today, joining us, Alexander Irschenberg from our partners over at Contractbook. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex.
No problem at all, Max. Fellow German clinging name, although not German, but happy to be here and always happy to discuss any topics within commercial funnels and leadership in sales and marketing. So excited to talk about the topics today.
Amazing, amazing. And Alex, you're the VP of strategy and growth at Contract Book. You have an outstanding track record of building commercial teams. But one thing I like the most about your biography is that you actually started your career in the legal world, right? And I would like to ask you to give us a bit of an introduction and a bit of a background, and how did that happen?
How it happened I ended up in the legal world? That's a very good question. I think I go by the unofficial title of recovering lawyer these days, still recovering. No, I actually liked being in law, so I'm just taking a piss. Yeah, I know. When you're 19 years old and you're out of high school and you don't know what to do, I think you end up making some choices. I was pretty early on before that, actually very much into entrepreneurship and starting my own things, very small things back then, but still it made sense. And it gave me some financial freedom to do what I really wanted. And I thought I dreamt of being a lawyer. So I started law school, found out that that was really not really my thing, to be honest. So I ended up working instead, and then doing night school for law school, and it worked out pretty well because I'm very much a practitioner. So the practical experience I gained working for, like, I worked for Maersk, which is a big corporate, right, and figuring out that landscape, both politically and performance wise, was pretty good for me. And then I went into a law firm, had some very good years there, to be honest. And then the the entrepreneurship desire really pulled back. So I decided to go back to that I also did before, uni.
Mhm.
So it's a random journey, to be honest, but I believe in doing what your gut tells you to do. That's also how I make a lot of decisions on sort of that can't be data driven, and I'm pretty comfortable in that, I believe.
Mhm. And I think this background gives you also like very unique perspectives on certain things, right? And that's also why I'm so excited about this LinkedIn Live with you. And before we really dive into the topic today, I would like to ask you for a bit of a temperature check on the markets, on sales in general, and also, what are sales reps doing, or top performing sales reps doing in these market environments compared to their peers?
That's a very good question, and I'm not sure I can get it absolutely right, but I can definitely draw on some experience both from our own setup, but also on companies that we work with, spar with. It's important to have a good network around this, I guess, in especially during these times.
Mhm.
I would say there are a few key topics that should be touched upon in this kind of scenario. So first of all, your funnel changes. So that's one thing I'm definitely going to talk about. Second, on the performance of salespeople, I think it's mentally a little bit tough to be a salesperson right now. It's
I hope my
very hard
CEO is
to.
listening. I hope my CEO is
Oh, but I'm
listening.
also I'm also gonna tell you that they're very spoiled. So don't worry about that. I think so. So if I touch upon those two things, and because they are somewhat interconnected, actually, I think
Mhm.
what happens right now in the current market is that, of course, there's a slowdown, but we also came from an insane high. Like it was like unsustainable. Like the way people were buying, especially software, like it wasn't real. You're looking at it and you're like, who makes a decision like that? There's like, you go on a call, a demo, and they're like, yeah, let's buy it. then you also see that they churn really shortly after. So what comes around goes
Mm.
around, I would say. So how people buy now is that a lot of the stuff that they do pre, booking a demo is expanding. And that means that your top funnel stage and your mid funnel stage, on especially where marketing is relevant, of course, they expand quite a lot. So that means that customers are spending more time doing their own due diligence before they reach out to you. So your bottom funnel stage becomes very short. So what happens in that? That means that your salespeople can almost only fuck up
Yeah.
because the buyer has made 90% of their decision before they touch you.
Yeah.
And that for a salesperson can be quite tough because they often end up in the situation either you're the one of the first choices. So that means that marketing has done a very good job of getting them through all the knowledge thing, the thought leadership stuff, the practical guides, the case studies that you have on your website that you push out into different channels. And then the customer thinks you're the preferred option. And then they go into your sales process and they'll be, yeah, it's you and two other competitors, and you sort of with your ahead, right?
Mhm.
But you also have a lot of cases where it's one of your competitors
Yeah.
or other solutions that are not directly your competitors, but are an alternative to your setup that have delivered those practical guides, that thought leadership content, etc. And then you're just you're just against the wall, right? Because you can only send them price offers almost that are cheaper than the main choice, and then hope that this is going to go well, or you can hope that you have a good conversation, but you honestly only have maybe 2 times 45 minutes to do so.
Mm.
And that is a very different step right now. And it means that, in my perspective, marketing has to cover a bigger part of the funnel. BDRs, if you still want to have a BDR setup, needs to be more of a marketing function than a sales function. I'm not saying they should report to marketing necessarily, but they should be doing awareness work or evaluation work at the middle of the funnel, and less demo booking at the end of the day. So they should be measured on something different. And I think that's where, if we're back to the struggling part, we just hired a ton of salespeople over the past 2-3 years, right? Everyone did.
Yeah.
And right, like salary is going insane. Like they're by far the best paid role in the company if you look at sort of their track record and like how long have they been in a professional job, like all of those things. They're by far the best paid. And that's because there was a shortage of it. And everyone appreciates a good salesperson because it's very easy to measure success. Win rate, how much revenue do you close? It's very simple. And that was fine if the funnel is covered to a large extent by sales. You can have like a sales-led growth engine. That's fine. That is
Mhm.
just almost impossible to have today if you have, like us, sort of lower or mid SMB product. That's where we want to be. If you're an enterprise, it's a bit different. Sales cycles are much longer and those things. So let's talk everything less than $100,000 a year if you have that
Mhm.
contract value. And that puts a different pressure, but we're still measuring salespeople or BDRs on new revenue.
Mm.
And to me, that's one of my pet peeves at the moment. I think we put ourselves in that situation, but I don't think it's the right way to measure success, because it doesn't make sense to put all that both pressure but also reward on
Mm.
one person. That would mean that it's only the salesperson who delivers the deal.
Yeah.
But if the premise is that the funnel is now much more covered by marketing, like they have to cover a bigger span, like 90%, as I said, and then NDR, like how you retain your customers and how you expand your customers, because most of us have some sort of land and expand strategy. The CS team becomes important, and the account team, if you have an account team. So sales is actually a very small part of it. And I still believe sales is a crucial part of this funnel. But if
Mhm.
they don't understand what's going on before and what's going on after, and we don't start introducing some goals that are shared across that funnel,
Mhm.
then I think, to be honest, you'll probably have a hard time scaling your commercial team.
And you're already touching upon a lot of things, but let's continue talking about how to scale the commercial team. And the way I've thought about doing it is basically three different blocks. So the first one would be going a bit deeper into what does a top performing commercial team look like, how to structure it. A big part of this, I think, will be breaking down silos in organization. The second part would be more about when to scale a commercial team, how to expand, how to hire, or what role also the pipeline plays in that discussion. And then the last part, and you also touched a bit on that already, with the right metrics, right? What kind of indicators are we using to measure these teams? And let's start with the first part. You already mentioned marketing, you already mentioned customer success, but what are your learnings when it comes to commercial teams and then scaling them?
It is that if you don't find a way, and this is like the most, I think, the most set thing in sales and any commercial setup is that you have to, like, your teams have to speak together, right? They have to align on important stuff. But it's so hard to do. It is so hard to do, and I think as human beings we like being in like certain roles, and we like being like, I fit here, I cover this part. So if you look at your commercial funnel, like, you kind of split it into some stages, and each team covers, certain stages of that funnel. That's probably how most people do it. It's also how we did it before. That's a mistake, because it doesn't solve the silo issue that you have, because it just nurtures it, to be honest, because you then set up goals that are connected to that stage.
Yeah.
And that means that everyone optimizes, obviously, for their own stage. That's inevitable. So even though you say, like, yeah, we have to think about the whole funnel, you end up optimizing for your own stage. So I'm a big believer now that you start creating shared goals across the different stages. You should see your customer journey much more as overlapping. So let's say we take marketing, for instance. Okay, a lot of stuff goes on in marketing all the way to they book a demo. You perhaps also have an outbound strategy. You also have some BDRs, as I said. Well, they should be overlapping. That's why I say it becomes more of a marketing function. It's not because they do marketing work per se, but they do some of the tasks that you would normally also do in marketing, which is creating awareness about your product. It is, being on LinkedIn, social selling. It is being part of not only booking demos, but also spreading out important information. So let's say that you're launching a mid-funnel evaluation type content. So you have a strategy. Let's send out this ebook about something on how to, in our world, implement a contract management system, or how to build up a scalable legal function or an operations function when it comes to contracts. Today, I believe that BDR should also be measured on the success of how that content is performing, how it's spreading out. And that's it doesn't sound controversial, but it is controversial.
Yeah.
Because we're used to measuring them on meetings booked.
Yeah.
And that's how their salary structure is. That's how their comp plans are. So that makes it very hard to change. But I think if you're brave, you do that change now, rather yesterday than tomorrow, and you start overlapping your funnel so that BDRs grab some of the marketing stuff and help marketing, and marketing helps BDRs. Obviously, it goes hand in hand, but you force them to work together on a shared goal. And the same for salespeople. I think where sales are starting to overlap AEs is that they will overlap into the onboarding journey. So that transition, also an old geezer, right, in sales and CS, how to do the perfect handover. Yeah. Again, we still do, like, then you have some handover note, right, or a guideline or process or whatever, but it stops by the sale, and then CS has to take over. I think it has to be like this. I think the salesperson needs to take more ownership. They need to be accountable for the quality of the revenue that they bring in. They shouldn't just be measured on the new revenue. They should be counted on how good is that revenue. And that's, again, where then they start overlapping with the CS goals, which obviously is to get people on board, to get them to value, and upselling them at the end of the day. And you can do that in many things. We tried out pod structures, like putting different team members together and then measuring shared goals. We succeeded and we failed at the same time, I would say. But it's a very, very difficult discussion to take in this silo setup.
Yeah, yeah. And a shout out to my customer success manager, Nikolai Lund, because I'm driving him regularly crazy when it comes to onboarding. And he's doing an amazing job. But let's talk more about the breaking the silo part. Last time we spoke, you told me about the Contractbook Academy. And I really loved this idea. And I would like to ask you, how does that help with breaking down silos and making the teams collaborate more, and also having this overlap being communicated and understood by teams?
It helps actually also to connect to the next bullet on your list out of the three, like when to scale stuff.
Mhm.
I've learned, I think many of us learned in this environment, that just hiring new people isn't really a sustainable way to do this. It's very hard to onboard. It's very hard to get people to perform when you're all about hiring and you're all about getting more people into the
Mm.
business. And what we learned internally is that we have first of all, we have a product that is an old problem, but it solves it in a little bit of a different way. That
Mhm.
means that in practical terms, we need to educate the customer on the problem, the proposed solution, and the fact that, and also build trust. So we need to be quite knowledgeable about our product and how that manifests in the company or the prospects that we're working with. And that requires you to know a lot of stuff about the product you're selling.
Yeah.
And we decided a while back now that we had to invest in that. And I think there was, to be honest, a lot of pushback. I don't think, like, when you look at the management team, I don't think we were all in agreement that we should spend that many hours in workshops and education setups, et cetera, educating the people. Like, I think that the ROI was difficult for people to grasp.
Mm.
But and we actually ended up snoozing it for 6 months because we weren't sure, so we only did it for new employees. But we could see we kept making the same mistakes. We kept talking the wrong language. We weren't in control of our messaging. We weren't talking about the customer's problems. We were trying to pitch features and those things. Like, it wasn't great. So we decided, okay, let's do it and have it. So we basically have a full academy, a university setup, whatever you want to call it, with a full curriculum and workshops. And it's not only for new people, it's also for existing employees. We actually just spent 2 months driving the entire company through these team setups.
Yeah.
And they are cross-functional, meaning that in each class we have about 10, 12, 14 people, and they're from different teams.
Okay.
So they work together in we have some pre-work that people need to do, some reading stuff, some preparation.
Yeah.
Then we have some short, like, conversations about that, and then we go into very practical workshops that we built.
Is
And
it in
putting
person?
people
Is
Yeah,
that in
sorry.
person?
No, so we are a remote company for a
Okay.
large part. So about 60% of our company is remote. So we do it
Mhm.
remotely. Actually, it works really well. We like with tools like FigJam, Miro,
Yes.
Mural, etc. It's super easy to do this interactive session online. I actually tried doing one of them physical, and I couldn't. I honestly couldn't figure it out because I was so used to it happening on screen.
Uh,
Um, and it really helps. Like, the feedback we get, like the average. So of course we rate everything, we score everything, we have tests afterwards. Like, we have quizzes, we have these things, and the feedback is really, really awesome. And one of the top points that I mentioned is that people really like sitting together with, for instance, if you're a salesperson, then you're sitting together with a developer and a marketing person.
Mm.
And you're trying to solve these challenges that, of course, we've created, like, that mimics a customer challenge. And they try to build in the product, they try to talk about solution, try to present the solution. And the perspective it gives is really, really cool. And suddenly you get a deeper understanding of, that developer that actually, is behind this part of the product. Now you actually know what they were thinking, or at least part of what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot. And the other way around, the developers get a first-hand impression of what's going on at the very front of
Yeah.
the company where you meet the customer.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Something we should also look into here at Arpedio, this kind of academy setup. Amazing. Talking about the second point, going a bit deeper into that, and I think this is probably my favorite question today. When it comes to expanding sales teams and hiring. What are your learnings here? And I want to have this question with a little twist. What role does pipeline actually play?
So let me start in like segueing in from where or some of the mistakes we've done, for
Okay.
sure. And that was actually in when to like the actual point in time when you scale. And we weren't, for instance, if we'd had something like academy and other things, we
Mhm.
would definitely have had a higher rate success rate on hiring new people,
Yeah.
because we didn't have like that structured. Like we were just hiring people and throwing them, in the water and expecting them to swim automatically, even though we knew that wasn't the best strategy. But we simply, it was happening so fast that we just did it. So we weren't ready. So one of the things that I learned is that until you can look at your team and be comfortable that they know the product, they know the process, they know the market, they know how to sell it, if we talk AE specifically or BDRs, that you have people that are going to be your cornerstones. They're going to be the picture of how it should be.
Mhm.
Unless you have that and you're comfortable you have that, you shouldn't be scaling in any meaningful sense. You can do replacement hires, you can do one hire, but you shouldn't start adding and scaling, because you're actually not ready to scale if you don't have that under control.
Yep.
So that's what Academy helps us do. We can actually get a pretty good insight into how is this team performing, not only on the sales metrics, but do they understand the
Mhm.
business?
Yep.
Meaning, if we add more people in, will they be the role models that we expect them to be? So that's one of the key things that Academy gives us and the training gives us in this setup. Then I'm a firm believer in having openness in the team. So you should be connecting them with other team members early on. If you're not ready to do that, if there's not enough openness or transparency in your business to do it, focus on that transparency and then hire people to get
Mhm.
them in, because otherwise you won't get the dialogue
Yeah.
between the teams. And that brings me into one of the core things when you talk about pipeline and forecasting and those things, because if there's not a good alignment between your marketing team, your product marketing team, your sales team, and also your CS team, we're going to take that in the end and why that's relevant,
Mhm.
then your pipeline will suck,
Yep.
because again, you optimize within your own silo. So marketing will be focusing on whatever MQLs, SQLs, maybe opportunities, and then look at some conversions, which is an ultimate lacking indicator for them. So they can't really maneuver the landscape really quickly if they look at that bottom funnel number. So they end up optimizing for that. That in most instances means that you have an inflated funnel on the MQL, SQL stages. In the current market, salespeople will take whatever they can get, because there's not enough pipeline for them to fill up and reach their targets. I think Pavilion, the old revenue collective, their numbers are that I think was it 27% of sales reps produce 80% of all revenue in your company. Does that mean that you fire the remaining sales team? No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. But it's quite interesting, and almost no one is on target, and actually very far from the target. So you have a sales team that's very far from target, seeing an inflated pipeline, if that's the focus and how you focus your marketing team. But they will start grabbing those MQLs and SQLs because they need something for their pipeline. What that leads to is obviously bad opportunities, because at the end of the day, it's not the right ICP. Perhaps they didn't have the problem that you thought they had. We didn't educate them through the funnel. So the salesperson ends up with a win rate that's super low. And what that happens, your pipeline and your forecasting is, of course, built on whatever metrics you're trying to reach. So let's say you're trying to hit a 25 or 30% win rate and a sales cycle of 30 days. Well, if you start pulling in bad leads, you will definitely decrease the win rate and the sales cycle will be longer.
Mm.
That means that your pipeline and the assumptions you did when you made your forecasting and when you set everything up will be wrong.
Mm.
And you end up with lower revenue or less revenue and a pipeline that didn't predict anything in those scenarios. And that's where we have to break the silo. We have to basically get them to work together quite easily so that the pipeline is a common goal. The pipeline is not a marketing goal. It's not a sales goal. It's not a CS goal. It's not a management goal. It's a company goal. It's about creating sustainable business for the company. And that's what your pipeline should reflect. How good are we at producing the right people at the right time, having the right problems, having the right perspective on what we should do with them. Because, and then back to the CS point, if you then force all of this through, you're forcing the bad leads through, inevitably you'll have good salespeople and they will win some of those deals because, you know, they build up rapport with the prospect, and even though it's not a perfect fit, they will sell it anyway because, you know, we need some revenue, and there will be a pressure from management to close the deal. What happens? You're handing over a deal that is not a perfect fit for your company, and CS is left with shit.
Yeah.
And then CS suddenly has to resell because, you know, we couldn't do exactly what they needed, and so on and so forth. And they onboard slow. Maybe they don't even onboard at all, and then it's just a churn waiting to happen. After 12 months, if you close them on a 12-month contract, your finance team will hate you because they're not going to pay their bills because they don't believe they get the value. It's just a vicious cycle if you don't get that alignment right.
Yeah.
And that's also if you're not trusting your pipeline, if you're not trusting that process, I wouldn't be comfortable hiring more people, because one of the most expensive things you can do is actually hire people. And it's going to cost you so much in the end.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. I love it. And I also feel like when sales people are in the situation where they are grabbing for these MQL and go into these meetings, there's a certain desperation a lot of times that is also felt by the other side, right? Where you're not the laid back sales rep that is consulting you on certain things, but you kind of feel there's a certain desperation. So yeah, very good points.
Yeah, and I think the final point to that is that we often end up in the situation with pipeline where we throw in outbound as sort of a rescue plan every time we don't have enough pipeline from marketing, and that's just the biggest mistake you can ever do, because outbound is not a short-term fix. I believe in outbound. I also believe it in this market. Like, outbound is basically utilizing your network as a salesperson, and outbound is also building that network and connecting with people. But it's a long-term strategy. Outbound is not, let me just put it out there for everyone listening, if you're in sales or marketing or management or anything else, outbound is a long-term strategy. And it is a long-term strategy that is closer to marketing than it is to sales. Meaning, you can actually improve your outbound efforts if you align with your marketing team on it. So you can have ABM structures, ABS, call it whatever you want to call it, account-based something. Basically, it just means that you have a good lead list, that you're focused on that lead list, that both your marketing and your sales team work on success rates or improving the success rate towards that lead list because it's companies that you really want to work with. That's outbound. But it takes a long time to build it in a sustainable way. So stop measuring your sales team, your BDRs, your AEs on stupid activities, on shitty lead lists, if you haven't given them the prep work and just said, hey, let's do outbound. Okay, what the fuck does that mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything. So stop doing it. Do outbound, but do it as a long-term strategy. Do it as something that will have an effect in 6 months' time, not something that will have an effect next month because you suddenly realized that your pipeline was off.
Yeah, and that it's not a quick fix. Yeah, and let's talk about the last point here. Metrics. You have touched up on it a couple of times now. In general, sales, a lot of times we have leading indicators like revenue. What about lagging indicators? What are your recommendations? What's the right balance?
So revenue is the ultimate lacking indicator and not the leading indicator on this. Just for everyone out there, I know what you meant. So I think there's a lot of mistakes made on this, especially amongst first-time leaders on all levels. To be honest, we are all a first-time leader at any given level at some point in time because we progress. And the higher up you get, the more focus on these lacking indicators we sort of start doing. And the lacking indicator, that is something that shows you a result after the fact. That means that whatever you've done, for instance, revenue wise, the ultimate lacking indicator, for instance, for a sales team, is that it shows success on the back of everything else you've done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For marketing, it's even more a lacking indicator because it's so far after you actually did whatever you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the problem in that? What's that, Alex? That's fine, but you measure success. It's success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if you're in a pretty fast growing company, or you just want to be very flexible in your approach to business and learn from your mistakes and move around,
Mm-hmm.
and you're measuring something that manifests 1 to 12 months after you did a certain activity, how flexible do you actually think you are in that case? Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
leading indicators are indicators or metrics that can show you or guide you to whether what you're doing right now will hopefully yield that ultimate revenue result.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's important to mention that some lacking indicators and some leading indicators for each team will be the opposite for the other team.
Yeah.
So let's say, for instance, the number of opportunities or the number of SQLs that marketing generates. That's a lacking indicator for marketing because it's the sort of the final often measure point from where it gets handed over to a more of an interactive approach, which is the sales team. But it's a leading indicator for the sales team whether they're going to have enough to work with. So that's just important to state here. So figure out, no matter what team you're running, figure out what the difference between the two is, and then start measuring both. Because leading indicators will make you agile, flexible, all the fluffy consultant words I can figure out, but it basically just means that you can iterate really fast.
Right.
The lacking indicators will tell you ultimately if you're having success.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to balance both. So I like to, and that's why I think we should have overlapping goals. I believe that, for instance, a lacking indicator for the marketing team being a leading indicator for the sales team, that should be a shared goal somehow to produce that, especially if you have an outbound effort, then opportunities becomes a shared goal. And in marketing, I think we're very focused on SQL, MQL, SQL opportunities. The problem is that those things will only get tracked as such once you have some sort of server-side conversion. And server-side conversion just means that they go to your website and you now know who they are, i.e. they sign up with an email or they book a demo or whatever. In the current market, and that's back to the first point, where the funnel moves today, a lot of people will be doing due diligence without signing up for that ebook or without signing up for your demo. That means that a lot of stuff is happening at the top of the funnel that you are not tracking as MQL, SQL, whatever, as also mid-funnel metrics. So you need, as a marketing person today, and your sales team needs to be on board in that, needs to focus on what is going on up here, because the message that you start there needs to be the same message you have in your mid-funnel, has to be the same message you have in your bottom funnel, has to be the same message that sales is selling and CS is onboarding. And figure out your metrics through that journey. They will vary depending on which kind of setup you have. So don't just trust some boilerplate template you have. There will be some metrics that are the same. You should always look at sales cycles and win rates and stuff like that, but you need to figure out your own.
And we're coming slowly to an end here, Alex. I would like to wrap it up with one last key takeaway, learning, recommendation you have for all the sales leader watching us today.
Okay, so this is going to be a very honest one, and some will agree and some will definitely disagree. I know that already now, but that's as you said, I have a mixed background coming into this. I think it gives me sometimes the wrong perspective, but it definitely also gives me the right perspective. And I don't see things as black and white, and I don't believe that what you did 5 years ago is the right thing to do today necessarily. It could be, but it's not per automatic the right thing to do. pull your heads out of your asses as sales leaders, if you're a sales leader, because that's where we are.
Mhm.
Start thinking like a full funnel expert,
Yeah.
meaning that you need to understand what goes on before and after what you're doing. Stop measuring your sales team on siloed performance.
Mhm.
And once and for all, pull off the bandage and just do something that is more team oriented. Because at the end of the day, what I've learned, what I see when we manage to do that, we are still struggling with it. So we are by no means perfect. We've tried, we've failed, we've tried again, all those things. But it is so much better, and your team gets so much more satisfaction if they understand what's going on in the business. So the key takeaway here is that salespeople are not just motivated by money, especially not in a market right now where they're not hitting quotas or hitting targets. Their quotas we're lowering quotas. We're trying to figure out how to, you know, do better with the sales team because it's very hard for them to do it. But honestly, they also had a curve that went like this
Mhm.
when times were great. And now we're nursing them saying, oh, I feel so sad for you. Now we need to lower your quotas. And like, I have all the respect in the world for salespeople, but get our heads out of our asses, start looking at the entire business. If you're a leader, you have to understand it really well. You need to train your team in it. And
Mhm.
you need to start setting some goals for your team that covers more than just your own little planet of
Mhm.
silo. So yeah, get rid of it immediately. The ones who succeed in that will be the ones that win in the long game.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much. And Alex, I know how busy you are, so a big, big thank you again to you for joining us today. Thank you also to everyone watching. Make sure to follow our PDO, follow Contractbook. If somebody wants to reach out to you, Alex, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Um, LinkedIn, email. I'm pretty fortunate. My I don't know if that's a coincidence or not, but my initials are AI. That's really nice at the moment. So AI@contractbook.com. Otherwise, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always open for good discussions on commercial stuff, sales, marketing, CS, product, how it connects. That's what I care about.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, and see you next month when we talk with the Strategic Account Management Association. Have a good one. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, Max.